Hi, everyone. Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the Author Journey. I hope you're having a great day. We're here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and spring has sprung, but it's still a little chilly. But as always, one of my favorite days of the week is Tuesday afternoon if you're watching live, where the Author Journey is live on Tuesdays at 4 Atlantic time. But if you're watching the recording, it could be any time, day or night, couldn't it? But today's Author Journey, really excited to have another fellow Nova Scotia-based author, T.P. Wood, join us. TP is a suitor of words and spinner of imagination. He's been fascinated with the art of storytelling since he was a boy sitting on his grandfather's knee. His writing career stretches over 5 decades as the editor of weekly newspapers and company publications. A speechwriter for corporate executives, he has written screenplays and 30 years of private journals. His first love poetry has been published in the Niagara Poetry Anthology, The Banister, and Gravitas. 77 Degrees North, Mosaic Press, 2023, his first published novel, was a finalist in the 2023 American Fiction Awards. T.P. Wood graduated from McMaster University with an honors degree in English and History and is an active member of the Writers' Federation of Nova Scotia, Canadian Authors Association, and the Writers' Union of Canada. He lives in Westville, Nova Scotia. So let's bring TP up to join me for the author's journey. Hi, TP.
How you doing? And please
I'm
call me
great.
Tom. Please
Oh,
call me Tom.
Tom.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
Tom.
that works out. And when you were reading that introduction, I was thinking, oh my goodness, did I actually say that it was 5 decades of
5. I'm like, you're not that old, are you?
yeah, I'm not gonna tell.
Okay, I'll never tell. I'll never tell. But you kind of gave us a little bit of a hint,
I
right?
did. I did actually. And it,
You started when you were 2.
yeah, no, yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Well, welcome. And you and I met
Thank you.
at the fantastic Grown Up Book Fair, but we'd been, crossing paths in the virtual realm for a long time before that. So this has been a long time coming, and I'm really
Yes.
pleased that you're here with us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. And I just want to jump right in. I think you're about to have the first anniversary, bookversary, I call it, of
Yes.
77 Degrees North, just
Yep.
coming up soon. And so tell us a little bit about this debut novel. I'm really enjoying it, to be honest. I haven't quite finished yet, so no spoilers, but there is so much to unpack. So just give us just a little synopsis of what 77 Degrees North is.
Well, I think before I even get into that, I have to start out with genre because I struggled with that when it first came out. People would say, "What genre? What genre is it?"
Oh my goodness. Can I tell you that was a question I had? I'm still trying to place it in a particular genre. YA might be the umbrella, but the main character she's in high school, but then
Mhm.
she evolves. So maybe it's new adult.
Well,
But
let
then
me
there's a
tell
little
you.
supernatural. There's a little, there's intrigue. So go ahead. What did you come to?
Yeah, it's funny because it's not science fiction.
Mm-mm.
Um, I thought at one point it might have been I might have classified it as magical realism.
Mhm.
It's not fantasy. And then I was doing a little bit of homework a few months back, and I came up, and I was just doing research on different genres of books, and
Mhm.
I found this thing on speculative fiction, and that seems to be where it fits in. And speculative fiction is it's almost like a super genre of genres. It
No,
kind of
mash,
composes
mash.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
America.
and in my research, I found a wonderful description of speculative fiction by I don't know if you've ever heard of this author. Her name is Margaret Atwood.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I mean, if you think of The
A little-known
Handmaid's
author.
yeah, exactly. And if you think of The Handmaid's Tale,
Mhm.
um, Atwood describes speculative fiction as literature that deals with possibilities
Hmm.
in a society which have not yet been enacted but are latent. And I
Hmm.
thought that that's perfect because that's exactly what 77 North encompasses. And I'll
Hmm.
just go over a couple of them. The first one is the resurrection of shamanism. I
Hmm.
mean, that's kind of one, and I'm bringing that into the future because the book is slightly futuristic. It's not
Hmm.
hundreds of years. It's maybe 15, 20 years ahead.
Hmm.
The second thing that comes to my mind is the evolution of communication.
Hmm.
Um, I've always been fascinated with language, and then I was thinking, how can I fit telepathy in on this? And so I've kind of tuned into that, and I also love science. I mean, when I was a kid, I watched Star Trek. I watched
Hmm.
I loved it. And one of the first novels I ever read was John Wyndham, The Day of the Triffids, and
Hmm.
I was just drawn into that genre. But let me I digress.
That's
So there's a
okay.
lot of science in the book, and in it, the one of the main characters, CT, she has discovered this thing that she calls electrogenetics, which is a combination of biology and
Hmm.
physics.
I was going to say there's a lot of
Yeah,
crossways from archaeology and yeah,
exactly. So
chemistry.
exactly,
Hmm.
she is an astrophysicist. So
Hmm.
and then I'm bringing in this biological aspect of humanity. So I'm trying to
Hmm.
combine the things together. Long and short, that's kind of my take on it. So when somebody asks me what genre is it, I'm simply going to say speculative fiction.
Do you know what? I think that is a really smart decision, Tom. I think that's really, really brilliant. And because I have an ebook version of it. I just started from page one and started reading. And I had seen a few descriptions on Amazon,
Mhm.
but I hadn't really determined, what it was about. So I just started
Right.
reading, and I was seeing, oh, he's so brilliant. He's making up a language. And then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what planet are we on? So, and as I read, I realized that the opening scenes were in the Arctic in
Right.
Baffin Island.
Yeah.
So, what was it that brought you to
Hmm.
Baffin Island? Like, that's,
Uh, when I started writing it, I and we were talking briefly about linear and
hmm,
nonlinear thinking, but
I am not a
and
linear thinker.
no, me neither. And the whole concept of the book started. I see things, and then that's how I write. I see it in my head, and then I just
Mm,
describe it. So there's a picture that comes in, and then I just put it down in words.
mhm,
So the book started out. All I saw was a ship going along up into the Arctic, going along
mhm,
an island with a gigantic glacier, and that's how the idea started. It was
mhm,
that simple, and then it just built and built and built on
mhm,
that.
mhm,
Yeah, so it sometimes I just don't know where it's going to lead me.
mhm. Well, and I have to say, like, for me, you hit so many of my favorite touch points when it comes to genres that I love to read. And there were so many elements that I'm like, okay, how's he going to bring this all together? And it just kept me turning the pages. I love the main character, Julian. Is that how you pronounce
Shulin,
her name?
Shulin,
Shulin. Shulin.
Shulin.
Thank you very much. See, we need an audio
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
lexicon, right? And as I said, she starts out, as a teenager, but then,
right.
we follow her through her undergrad degree at U of T in archaeology, and
Yep.
then her advanced degrees and PhD. So to tell you where I am in the book, she's just been like pulled from her dig in Guatemala
Okay.
and brought back to her
Okay.
hometown. How do you pronounce the hometown again? Kuala. It,
Pangnirtung is
oh,
is is where she was born, and
okay.
they shorten it up, and that's part of the research
Pang.
because Pang they shorten it up to Pang.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just want to give a shout out. Hey, Sue Slade's watching us from Dartmouth Book Exchange.
Hi, Sue. How you doing? Good to see.
Yay.
Good to see you. I don't see you, but I'm glad you're
Yeah.
here.
And anybody who's watching, please
Yeah.
pop in comments if you would like to as we go, or questions for Tom or myself. So lots of, there is a lexicon in the back. I played around with, in my mind, pronunciations of words, and I really enjoyed doing that as I'm reading a book as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will. So there's a real mix, because the entire book is not set in the Arctic.
No.
And, I've lived in the Middle East. So that whole, the Western Sahara was really,
Right.
really drew my attention. So talk a little bit about, why did you choose these different locations? So she goes from the Arctic
Right.
to Western Sahara to Guatemala. Like, what was the reasoning behind that for the plot line?
You're trying to get some kind of a logical sequence out of me, and I'm not sure there is.
Oh, it doesn't have to be logical.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what I wanted to do is I was looking. I did so much research on this book in terms of archaeology and shamanism and Inuit culture and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to bring in there's a conflict and it's a continuing conflict actually right now in the Western Sahara, and I wanted to bring something in to give her a place where she could do an archaeological dig. And I just zoomed into this place in Tifariti called Rakiz Lem Gazem, and it just absolutely, as I was doing the research on the particular site, it just kind of expanded out. And this is part of how I write. I research and then I fit the pieces in and I kind of do it like a jigsaw puzzle. So I didn't set out to, I didn't think, okay, I'm going to go to the Western Sahara to do it. And there's also a scene in there in Libya. I'm trying to think of the city in Libya now. And thank goodness for Google Earth, because Google Earth, it was key. And I've had folks who have read the book come to me and say, oh, so you've been to Western Sahara? And I go, no, I haven't.
Well, see, and that was one of the questions that I had for you as well. In reading it, you really are adept at pulling the reader into the actual location. And I just did a workshop on location,
right,
and how important it is to do that 360. And my question was, have you been to these places? Do you have a background in archaeology? So talk a little bit about that, the research that you did. I mean, you talk research, but if an archaeologist just happened to pick up your book and read it, or somebody who's from these, the towns that you talk about,
right,
how would they react, do you think?
I hope it would be positive, because I do try to be as accurate as I can. And when I am doing the research, I mentioned before, I'm a visual writer. I see it in my head, and then I'll write it out. So there's a lot of reading that's involved when I'm doing research, but I also look at photographs and videos and all kinds of things that involve a specific area that I'm trying to describe, or I'm trying to incorporate into the plot or the action part of the book. So I get to a point, and I'm a voracious note taker. So I'm taking notes and I'm downloading photographs so that when I go back, if I get stuck, I'll go back to the visual and then fit in the pictures, or the pictures that come into my mind, and then I can add my own flavor to it. So to kind of get back to your question, I believe that in terms of the environment and the areas that I've chosen to describe in the book, I think if someone was from there, they would be pleasantly pleased. Or
Oh.
I would hope they do.
Well, not having been to, have been to Guatemala, and as I said, I lived in the Middle East. So as I wouldn't say I'm a picky reader when it comes to foreign locations and things like that, but I notice things,
Right.
and for me, I was able to get lost in it. And what also hearing what you talk about your research, what impresses me is that you've avoided the information dump
Yeah.
so far. Like I
Yeah.
said, I'm about halfway or a little bit more through. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you then pare down all of
Yeah.
that, the notes and the research?
Well, I want to make it readable and identifiable for people. I don't want to make and you haven't really got, if you're in Guatemala, you haven't got to the science part of it yet.
Okay.
There's a science, there's a physics scientific part of it coming up. You haven't even met Siti yet if you're in Guatemala.
Yeah. No. No.
No,
I met
okay.
I met the one from Zimbabwe.
Ahmed.
Obia Asmet. I know it started
Ahmed.
with an O. Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't you love that us authors talk about like meeting characters because
Yeah.
they just become so part of our lives as we're writing and reading. So which is awesome.
Well,
So no, I haven't met CD yet.
and to go back to your question, it's about not burying the reader, in facts, but giving enough facts that make it believable,
Mhm, mhm.
and make it and giving it enough facts to make it that you could imagine it when you're reading it. You know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm.
As opposed to reading a technical journal. Like I get into some serious physics, not or she's a physicist, so I
Hopefully.
have to incorporate this kind of stuff in it as, but I believe it's readable.
Okay. Well, I'll
I
let you
and
know. No.
I don't want to. I want the reader to have an enjoyable experience
Of course.
reading the book,
Yeah.
um,
And it's not like it reads like a textbook, right?
or a technical manual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So one of the
exactly.
things that really is very obvious and resonates is you've got multiple themes going on and historical struggles. Um, what inspired you to address some of those struggles? Like you talk about, the corporations taking over, natural resources. We talk about the struggles, like you mentioned in, Western Sahara.
Mhm,
um, why did you choose I in your bio it says that your background is in English and history,
mhm.
so were those parts of history part of your studies or more current interests?
Yeah, it would probably be more current interest,
Okay.
and eh, my main objective when I wrote this, and I'm actually writing the sequel to it right now.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Um, my main objective was to write a human story, to write something that is identifiable no matter what color you are, what
Mhm.
sex you identify as, what religion you are, what society you come from. I wanted to incorporate human emotions that every single one of us can identify with. A
Mhm.
smile, joy, grief. Grief is a huge factor in this book.
Yeah.
Working through it.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted I want my whole intention is for the book to be about connection as opposed to
Mm.
division. We live
Mhm.
in this world where everything is divided, and ownership and all these kinds of things.
Mhm.
And my intention was to write something that anybody who reads that book could identify with. And I mean,
Yeah.
I even wrote it from the perspective of a female, which is
Uh, Yeah, so I was actually that was you kind of lead me right into my next question. So your main character starts out as like a 16-year-old female from Nunavut. It's like how
Yeah.
much further away
Yeah.
from, whose grandmother is a shaman and who has inherited, and I think it's sad, but, hopefully as the book continues, it's sad that she's pushed that part of her heritage away, or she's trying to push it away, and, not very successfully, I'm happy to say. But, and also to your point earlier, shamanism is alive and well
It sure
in
is.
certain communities. So,
It in more communities than you can imagine.
I
And
know.
if have you been in Africa yet? No, you
Yes.
haven't. Oh, you have.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I've introduced the shamanism there, because
Mm-hmm.
shamanism, it's not exclusive to Inuit culture.
Oh, goodness, no. Mm-hmm.
It is a global phenomenon.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
so it's not, and that's one of the other aspects of it, that I was hoping that would incorporate
Mm-hmm.
that collective unifying
Mm-hmm.
factor, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not just specific
Yeah.
to indigenous culture.
Yeah.
It's all inclusive to most cultures on the planet.
Yeah. So did you happen to prepare a reading for us? Did you want to read an
I
excerpt?
I, I do have a reading that I do indeed, and
Excellent.
I would like to do that. And
I
it's
like it.
interesting, and I'll take it right out of there.
Excellent.
It's
That'd be a good
interesting
thing.
because you have met Ahmed, so you know Ahmed, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and
Yes.
I wrote this when I was still living in Ontario, and it's
Mm-hmm.
about Halifax, believe it or
Okay.
not.
Yes. Yes.
And I'll just kind of give you a brief setup of what it's about.
Okay.
Um, Ahmed has left, and he's coming back. He's coming back to reunite with Shulin, and she's just going over this idea that that she's going to meet him again, and there's a little bit of a romantic kind of a flavor going on, which I'm going to expand out in the sequel. But I'll just read this out here, and it's right at the beginning of chapter 18, which is called Ahmed Returns. When I was 13, Annan took me to Halifax. He was organizing a small office there as a hub for adventurers booking flights to Pang. I had watched him so many times fly off on our tiny airstrip, wishing I was going with him. It was the first time I'd been on a plane. Halifax was like being transported to another universe. The hustle and bustle of the city, the people, so many people going in every direction. My mind was electric. One day we ended up at the Halifax Harbor train terminal. Annan was busy arranging a container of supplies for Quikiktani quests while I scouted along the rail lines. I had never seen a train before and marveled at their size and power. Plodding in the yard, cars shunting, the screech of steel on steel, while the locomotives belched diesel, inching forward and back, and the domino cascade of couplings clanking in their unrelenting grip. The trains, the material, the cargo, all this abundance in boxcars, containers, racks of vehicles, thousands of them going where? Suddenly I felt the vastness of the world, the possibilities. I saw myself chugging down my own track, going to places so far from Pang that I couldn't even imagine where or if they existed. The trains, the cars, the track I traveled on since then flooded through me. And Ahmed. He was a rail car coupled to me, precious cargo I'd picked up along the way. I missed him. Or maybe I was allowing myself the luxury of missing him in this memory because he was about to reappear in my life again. I'd picked up so many cars along the way, dropped so many off, shunted back and forth with people in my life, people who served my purpose and those who didn't. The ones who could even remotely hurt me or penetrate my defensive wall, I would unhook and leave in the yard where they sat rusting and I could move along my track. one of those cars was pulling back into my station. I felt a mixture of joy and apprehension at his arrival. But there was one thing about which there was no confusion. Ahmed Akbari was my friend.
I love that. And I can't wait to hear how their relationship evolves. That's awesome. So, Tom, do you have kids? Like,
I do.
and is that did they sort of lend their input and thoughts to getting
No,
into the youthful brain?
no, I think I got to blame my grandfather for that, because he was 93 when he passed, and he was like 16 in his brain. So I think maybe I inherited part of that.
A forever child. I love it. I love it. And you mentioned earlier that, you know, you're weaving these common threads between cultures. And I really like that, because I think there needs to be more of that. And
thank you. Yeah.
It really, one of the scenes when she's in Algiers in Casbah, that she's listening, and when I travel, I love to listen to languages as well. It doesn't matter if I understand it or not. I just love the cadence of it. And she listens to Arabic for the first time and feels it's very similar to her own language, the Inuktitut language. Is that the right pronunciation?
Inuktitut.
And she mentions it has a similar cadence to her native tongue.
It does, and that's part of the research. Was I sat and I listened to them both together. So and they do there is a similarity in the consonants and the way they're pronounced. Absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. Do you know what? I'm just going on an aside. You have to get a book or follow a friend of mine who writes about the endangered alphabets of the world. Tim Brooks.
Tim Brooks.
He's brilliant, and he's just released a book. He's been on the author journey, but I think you would be fascinated with it. The Endangered Alphabets Project.
Is that the name of his book?
The Endangered Alphabets, yeah.
I'm writing it down. I'm a note taker.
Oh, good. I love that. I love that. I'm just trying to find, there was another scene that I wanted to talk about, because there are so many places. And as I said, you know, your writing is very riveting. It really did draw me in. I loved all the places. And, you know, because there were things that were unfamiliar, like in the Inuktitut language, when you started talking about her grandmother's toothpick, is that how you pronounce it?
Toothpick.
Yep. And of course, I prefer to try and, flow with the story. Right. And I'm thinking, okay, that must be, like her little tent in the back, or it's like kind of like a little sweat lodge or whatever. But the first time she walks in and you describe it, and you describe the whalebone ribs that are, part of the walls.
Right.
You really could envision it. And so did you discover that in photos during your research? Like, how did you made it up? Okay.
That part I made up.
Okay. I can just imagine these whalebones holding up the sides of the, and so the other thing I really like is you really don't know where sort of the factual reality and the imagination and fictional part sort of it's well blended. So kudos to you.
Exactly, and that's part of the blend of what we were talking right at the beginning about the speculative fiction. It's almost like an extension of reality.
Yeah,
and so it just fits exactly where my headspace goes. It really does.
That's wonderful.
I'm glad I did a little research and found out about it.
That's fantastic. And before we wrap up, I can't believe we're already at time. I want to make sure people know how to find your book. I think that they can find it.
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. It's at Indigo.
And Indigo. Okay.
You can go to my website, and that'll take you directly to the Mosaic Press website. Okay. You can call me.
So the best place to find you, tpwood.ca.
.ca. Yes, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be doing a little bit of a revamp on my website. I'm going to make sure that I've got a spot to connect with me, and
Okay.
also if you want to order something. Well, actually, you can order right from Mosaic right on the website from
Okay.
there. So,
Mosaic Press
yep.
and all of and you could probably order it into your local bookstore, right?
I'm working on that as well.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I know. And most people, most bookstores, if you have the ISBN number, will be able to order it. So
Yep.
hard to believe we are at time now. And it's been such a pleasure having you, Tom, on the author journey.
And thank you. And that was you're right. That's the fastest half an hour of my day here.
Where
And
did that
I
go?
really appreciate the time and the conversation. It's been great.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. And just hang out backstage, and we'll have a little chat
Okay.
before I let you go. So,
Okay. I'll wait for you right here.
okay, okay. Thanks so much.
Bye.
And thank you all for joining us this week on the author journey. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with TP Tom Wood, the author of 77 Degrees North, and poet and lifelong writer, just like many of you who are watching, and a process that's near and dear to my heart. And we'll be back again next week with the author journey. And we hope you can join us then. And in the meantime, happy reading and happy writing, and enjoy this beautiful day.